A moment that felt too real. The set was silent, except for the low hum of the camera rolling. Lights flickered against the smooth metal of the bus, and the director's voice echoed softly, calling for one more take. It was supposed to be a routine day. Another scene, another repetition, another carefully framed shot that would one day be part of movie history. Yet something in the air that day felt heavier, deeper, like something unspoken was about to surface. Keanu Reeves stood near the edge of the bus doorway, his hands tucked into the worn leather jacket that had already seen dozens of takes. His gaze wasn't on the crew or the camera. It was on Sandra Bullock, sitting quietly in her seat, looking out the window as if lost in another world. She was supposed to be in character, but Keanu noticed something different in her eyes. There was a softness there, a reflection of something more personal than the script demanded. She turned slightly, catching his eyes, and for a moment the entire set seemed to fade away. No crew, no cameras, no noise. Just two people locked in a look that said everything without words. It was only when the director shouted, "Cut," that they both blinked, as if waking from a dream. Sandra smiled, small and nervous, and Keanu returned it. That quiet, reassuring smile he was known for. The kind that carried comfort without needing explanation. During the short break, Sandra leaned back against her seat, still feeling the trace of that moment. She had worked with many actors, but Keanu's energy was different. He didn't force anything. He didn't pretend. He just existed in the scene with such stillness that it drew others into his gravity. There was something pure about it, something disarmingly human. When the next take began, the director changed a few lines, asked for more intensity. The story demanded fear, tension, a sense of connection in crisis. Sandra found it easy, too easy, to reach those emotions when she looked at Keanu. He had a way of making the world around her dissolve. When he spoke his lines, his voice carried something unspoken, as if behind every word there was an invisible story neither of them dared to touch. After the final take, when the cameras stopped and the crew began to scatter, Keanu stayed behind. He always did. He would help move props, talk to the technicians, make sure everyone was doing okay. It wasn't for attention. It was just who he was. Sandra watched from a distance, the corners of her lips lifting in a quiet admiration. She saw how he treated everyone the same way. Whether it was the director or a lighting assistant, he spoke with the same tone of kindness and respect. As the sun began to set, the production wrapped for the day. The golden light filled the space and the crew gathered around to laugh and take photos. Sandra was standing near the exit when Keanu walked up beside her. He didn't say much, just offered her a cup of coffee. She smiled, took it, and for a few seconds, there was silence again. Comfortable, peaceful silence. "You okay?" he asked softly. His tone wasn't the polite kind actors used for small talk. It was genuine, careful, like he truly wanted to know. She nodded, her voice almost a whisper. "Yeah, it's strange. Sometimes these scenes feel too real, you know?" Keanu looked at her, his eyes thoughtful. "Maybe that's what makes them good. When you stop pretending." Those words lingered long after the day ended. Sandra drove home that evening with the city lights blurring through her window, thinking about what he said. She had built her career on playing different people, wearing emotions like costumes, but something about Keanu made her drop the act, if only for a moment. In the weeks that followed, they grew closer. Not in a loud, public way, but in quiet gestures. A shared laugh, a hand offered during long hours, a soft glance between takes. They talked about life, not fame. About loss, not awards. She learned about his past, how much he carried inside without showing it. There was pain, yes, but also a rare kind of grace in how he handled it. One night, after a long shoot, the two sat alone near the empty bus set. The crew had left, the lights dimmed, and the city outside was quiet. Sandra leaned against the window, looking out at the dark horizon. Keanu sat beside her, his hands resting on his knees. "You ever think about what all this means?" she asked. "The movies, the stories, the people watching us, believing in something that isn't real?" He was silent for a while before answering. "Maybe it's not about what's real," he said softly. "Maybe it's about what people feel. If it touches them, maybe that's real enough." His words hit her in a way she didn't expect. For a moment, she wanted to say something more, to tell him how much that truth mattered, how it mirrored the way she saw him. But before she could, a faint sound came from behind them. Someone had returned to the set. They turned, expecting to see one of the crew, but it wasn't. It was the director, holding a small camera, smiling quietly. "That last conversation," he said, "that was beautiful. I wish we had that on film. It felt real." Sandra looked at Keanu, realizing with a chill that maybe the line between their roles and their real selves had already begun to blur. She couldn't tell anymore if the emotions she felt were part of her character or something else entirely. That night, lying awake, she replayed every look, every word. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this connection was not just another friendship born from a film set. It was something rare, fragile, and utterly human, something that couldn't be scripted. But what she didn't know yet was how deeply that truth would change both their lives in the days ahead. The clip that changed everything. The message came at midnight. Sandra was half asleep when her phone buzzed softly beside her pillow. At first, she ignored it, assuming it was another late-night email from the studio. But when the sound came again, she turned, her heart slowing as she saw the message preview on her screen. It was a video file from an unknown number with a single line beneath it, the scene that wasn't acting. She sat up, confusion turning to unease. The thumbnail showed her and Keanu sitting on the empty bus set. Her mind flashed back to that night, to the quiet conversation she thought no one had recorded. With hesitant fingers, she pressed play. The clip began with the hum of the camera's faint audio. Their voices filled the darkness of her room. She watched herself on the screen, laughing softly, her expression unguarded, her tone different from the professional calm she usually carried. Keanu's voice came next, low, thoughtful, honest. "Maybe it's not about what's real," he said on the video. "Maybe it's about what people feel." Something in his tone felt even more intimate when heard from the outside. It wasn't performance, it wasn't character, it was truth. And as the clip ended, Sandra noticed something else. The small camera reflection in the background. Someone had been filming them secretly without permission. She replayed the message twice, trying to figure out who could have sent it. But there was no clue, no signature, no trace. Only the haunting reminder that something private had been taken. She texted the number back immediately, asking who it was, but the message never delivered. It was like the sender had vanished. The next morning, Sandra arrived early on set, her eyes heavy but her expression steady. Keanu noticed the quiet shift in her mood as soon as she walked in. He approached her during a break, his voice gentle. "You didn't sleep much," he said. She hesitated, unsure if she should tell him. Then she took a deep breath and showed him the message. Keanu's jaw tightened as he watched the video. When it ended, he stayed silent for a long time, his eyes focused somewhere far away. Finally, he said, "Whoever did this crossed a line." "Do you think it could be someone from the crew?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," he replied. "But whoever it was, they knew what they were doing, and they wanted us to see it." That day, filming felt different. Everyone on set seemed unaware, yet Sandra found herself watching every move, every whisper. The trust she once felt toward the crew now trembled under suspicion. Keanu stayed close, subtly protective, offering her small reassurances, a nod, a quiet glance, a calm presence when tension built, but things took a strange turn 2 days later. While scrolling through social media during lunch, a production assistant gasped. "Hey," he said, "someone leaked a clip from the movie." Sandra froze. Her fingers went cold as she reached for her phone. Within seconds, she found it. The same video, posted anonymously on a small film forum. The caption read, "When acting becomes real." The comments were flooding in. People were moved, confused, captivated. Some thought it was part of a marketing campaign. Others said it was a genuine, unscripted moment between two actors who shared something deeper than friendship. The director saw it too, and soon the entire crew was whispering. The production halted for an emergency meeting. Sandra sat quietly in the corner as the director spoke in a stern voice, promising to find the source. Keanu stayed silent beside her, his expression unreadable. After the meeting, Sandra walked out alone. Keanu followed her, catching up as she stepped outside into the bright daylight. "You okay?" he asked. "No," she said softly. "This was supposed to stay between us. It wasn't a scene, it was real." Keanu looked at her, the sunlight reflecting in his eyes. "Maybe that's why people are connecting with it," he said. "Because it was real." She turned to him, frustration breaking through her calm. "But it wasn't meant for them to see." "It was ours," he didn't argue. Instead, he just nodded slowly, understanding her pain without trying to fix it. That was one of the things she admired most about him. He never filled silence with empty words. He just listened, and somehow, that was enough. That night, Keanu received a message of his own. Same number, same line, the scene that wasn't acting. But this time, the message included something else, a photo of both of them together from the first week of filming. It wasn't a still from the movie. It was candid. Someone had been following them for longer than they realized. He didn't tell Sandra right away. He didn't want her to worry more than she already did. Instead, he decided to investigate quietly. He started talking to crew members, observing the ones who always lingered after hours, the ones who seemed too curious about personal moments. But what he didn't know was that the leak was spreading faster than anyone expected. Within a week, major entertainment pages picked it up. Blogs began to speculate. Was this love? Was it method acting? Was it real emotion caught by chance? The line between truth and fiction blurred completely. The studio tried to control the narrative, claiming it was a promotional moment. But fans didn't buy it. They could feel something genuine in that clip, something raw that no marketing campaign could create. And deep down, Sandra felt it too. She knew what she had felt that night wasn't acting. It was real connection. Quiet, pure, and terrifying in its honesty. But as the days passed, the story took an even darker turn. Sandra began receiving more anonymous messages, short lines like, "People see what you try to hide," or "Truth always finds its way out." She tried to ignore them, but each new message came with a picture, some taken on set, others in moments she didn't even remember being photographed. Someone was watching them closely. Someone who wanted them to believe that the scene wasn't over yet. One evening, as they wrapped another intense shoot, Keanu found her sitting alone, scrolling through her phone with trembling hands. He sat beside her, his voice steady. "Whoever this is, they want control." "Don't give it to them." She looked at him, her voice breaking slightly. "What if they already have it?" He placed a hand gently on hers. "Then we take it back." For a moment, their eyes met and everything around them, fame, fear, speculation, disappeared. But just as that quiet sense of trust returned, a crew member rushed toward them, holding a phone. "You two need to see this," he said urgently. On the screen was a new post, shared thousands of times within minutes. It was another video, one neither of them remembered filming. It showed Keanu and Sandra walking off set together, talking softly. But the video ended with a chilling detail. Someone whispering from behind the camera, "Keep rolling. The real story's just starting." Behind the lens, the air on set had changed. What once felt like a safe space filled with laughter and creative energy now carried a quiet tension. Every camera lens felt suspicious. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Sandra tried to focus on her lines, but her eyes kept drifting toward the corners of the room. searching for something or someone that shouldn't be there. The morning after the second video went viral, reporters began circling outside the studio gates. The world was no longer talking about the movie. They were talking about the chemistry between Keanu and Sandra, the mystery of the leaked footage, the possibility that everything people were seeing was more than acting. Inside, the director tried to calm the storm. "We're handling it," he said, his tone a mixture of control and concern. "The studio's running an internal check. Everyone's devices will be reviewed." But even as he spoke, Sandra could feel it. Whoever was behind this wasn't worried. This person wasn't afraid of being found. They wanted attention. They wanted the story to live. Keanu noticed her silence. Between scenes, he walked up to her, his voice low. "You're still getting messages, aren't you?" She hesitated before nodding. "One came this morning," she whispered. It said, "The truth always looks best in focus." Keanu's eyes hardened, but his tone stayed calm. "Then we find who's behind the camera." From that moment, he made it his quiet mission. During breaks, he started observing more closely. Who handled the cameras, who stayed late, who seemed too interested in the story outside the script. There was a stillness in the way he moved, a careful patience, like someone piecing together a puzzle in silence. That evening, the production wrapped early. Sandra sat alone in her trailer, scrolling through her phone, hoping the messages would stop. But then her screen lit up again. Another message. This one different. It wasn't a threat. It was a video link. She almost didn't click it, but curiosity overpowered fear. The video began in the studio hallway. It was shaky, like footage captured secretly on a phone. She saw herself walking with Keanu, laughing softly. But then the camera turned. For a second, the reflection of the person filming appeared in a mirror on the wall. It was quick, but Sandra froze. She recognized the jacket. The same jacket worn by a member of the lighting crew, a young man named Liam, who had joined the production only 2 weeks earlier. Her heart began to race. She called Keanu immediately. Within minutes, he was outside her trailer. She showed him the clip, her hands trembling. He watched silently, then looked at her. "Stay here," he said firmly. "Lock the door." "Keanu, what are you going to do?" she asked. "Talk to him," he said simply, and before she could protest, he was gone. Keanu walked down the dim corridor toward the back storage area where Liam often stayed late. The air smelled of metal and dust. He could hear faint music playing from a phone somewhere ahead. When he turned the corner, he saw Liam, adjusting equipment, pretending not to notice him. "Hey," Keanu said softly. "Long day, huh?" Liam turned, startled. "Oh, yeah, just wrapping up." Keanu stepped closer, calm but focused. "I saw the video you made. The one you shouldn't have." For a moment, Liam froze. Then he laughed nervously. "I don't know what you're talking about." Keanu didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. "You do," he said quietly. "And I need you to tell me why." Liam's eyes darted around the room. "It wasn't supposed to be bad," he said finally. "People loved the first clip. I thought if I shared more, it'd help the film. Everyone's talking about it. It's good for both of you." "You filmed us without permission," Keanu replied, his tone even. "That's not helping. That's betrayal." Liam's confidence cracked. "I didn't mean harm," he whispered. "But once I started, someone reached out. They paid me to keep sending the clips. I don't even know who they are. The messages came from a private address. They said if I stopped, they'd release everything." "Everything?" Keanu repeated, his eyes narrowing. Liam nodded, pulling a small hard drive from his pocket. "They told me to send this next. It has footage from weeks ago. You and Sandra behind the scenes talking off camera." Keanu took the drive, his fingers tightening slightly. "You're going to tell the director," he said. "And then the police. But first, you're going to disappear from the set." "Today." Liam nodded shakily, fear replacing guilt. He packed his things and left without another word. When Keanu returned to Sandra, she stood at the door, waiting. He handed her the drive. "It's over," he said softly, though his tone carried the weight of uncertainty. "You think he's telling the truth?" she asked. "Maybe part of it," he said. "But if someone paid him, this isn't just about a leak. It's about control." They decided to view the contents together the next morning, with the director and studio security. That night, neither of them slept much. Sandra kept thinking about all the moments that had been stolen, about the line between performance and reality that had been twisted into something cruel. Keanu sat quietly in his apartment, the drive resting on the table in front of him, reflecting the dim light. He didn't like mysteries left open. The next morning, they gathered in the director's office. The door closed, the blinds drawn. Keanu inserted the drive into the computer. Folders appeared, hundreds of them, labeled with dates. As the first video began, the room fell silent. It showed Sandra rehearsing alone, laughing between takes, unaware of the camera hidden near the set lights. Another clip showed Keanu helping a crew member fix equipment. Another, both of them sitting together after hours. But then came something else. A file labeled Final Scene Raw. Keanu clicked it. The video showed a dark corridor behind the studio. The camera shook as someone walked toward a door. Muffled voices were heard, two people arguing. Keanu leaned forward, recognizing the voice immediately. It was Sandra. She sounded distressed. Then another voice replied, low and calm. Keanu's own voice. But he didn't remember this moment. It wasn't part of any film. It wasn't part of any rehearsal. On screen, they stood face to face in dim light. Sandra's expression was tense, her voice trembling. "You don't understand, Keanu," she said. "This isn't about the movie anymore." And then the camera fell to the floor, the video cutting to static. Sandra's breath caught. "That never happened," she whispered. "I never said that." Keanu stared at the frozen screen, his mind racing. "Someone edited this," he said slowly. "Someone's creating new footage." The director leaned forward, his voice tight. "This isn't just a leak. This is manipulation." A chill passed through the room. For the first time, it wasn't about curiosity or gossip. It was about something darker. Someone trying to rewrite their story, to make the world believe in a version of events that never existed. Keanu looked at Sandra, his voice steady. "Whoever's behind this, they're not done yet." The next scene, the following morning, arrived heavy and gray, as if the sky itself had absorbed the tension that lingered between every heartbeat on set. Sandra woke early, her mind still replaying that final clip over and over. The words that weren't hers, the expressions she never made. It all felt like a violation of something sacred. Somewhere, someone was crafting a story from her life, shaping truth into fiction with a cruel kind of precision. Keanu was already waiting at the studio when she arrived. He stood near the entrance, quiet and focused, dressed in black, his hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. When she saw him, the weight on her chest lightened slightly. He gave her a small nod, the same kind he always used when words weren't enough. "You got the message too?" he asked. She nodded slowly. 3 words. "Next scene tomorrow." "Yeah," he said. "I got it at the same time." They walked together toward the soundstage, the echo of their footsteps filling the silence between them. The director had suspended shooting until the investigation was complete, but the crew still moved around nervously, pretending everything was normal. Cameras were locked away. Security guards stood at every exit, and yet both of them could feel it, eyes watching from somewhere unseen. When they reached the main set, a faint sound came from one of the monitors. It was on, playing something. Sandra frowned. "Who turned that on?" she asked. Keanu stepped forward and pressed play. The monitor flickered, showing a new video. It was dark, grainy, filmed from an angle near one of the soundstage windows. The timestamp showed it was recorded just hours ago. They watched themselves walking into the studio from the very moment they had arrived that morning. Keanu's voice was calm but cold. "Whoever's doing this is inside." The director called in the head of security, and within minutes, the entire set was searched. Every room, every corridor, every storage cabinet. They found small cameras hidden in lights, in air vents, even one inside a fake prop wall. Someone had turned the entire place into a maze of surveillance. Sandra sat down on a wooden crate, her face pale. "They've been watching us the whole time," she said softly. Keanu crouched beside her, his tone steady. "They want to control the story. But stories can be taken back. How?" she asked. How do you fight something invisible? He looked at her with quiet determination by refusing to play their script. That night, after the studio shut down, Keanu and Sandra decided to stay behind. They wanted to see who would return after hours. The crew believed it was dangerous, but Keanu insisted. "If we don't confront this now, it'll never stop," he said. They waited in the shadows of the empty set, the only light coming from the faint glow of a street lamp outside the glass windows. Hours passed. The air grew colder and the silence thickened. Sandra tried to stay calm, her thoughts flickering between fear and exhaustion. She watched Keanu, how still he was, how patient. It was as if he had been preparing his whole life for quiet battles like this one. Sometime after midnight, they heard footsteps, slow, careful, deliberate. A shadow moved across the far wall. Keanu gestured for Sandra to stay back. He stepped forward, his eyes following the faint outline moving near the prop room. Then suddenly, a light flickered. Someone was at the monitor, typing something. Keanu approached quietly, his footsteps silent against the floor. As he got closer, the figure turned. It wasn't Liam. It wasn't anyone from the regular crew. It was a woman, one of the assistant editors who worked with the post-production team. Her name was Clara. She froze when she saw him. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "Neither should you," he replied calmly. "What are you doing?" Clara's hands trembled as she tried to close the laptop. "You don't understand," she said quickly. "They're making me do this." "Who is?" Keanu asked. She looked at him, her eyes filled with fear. "Someone higher. Someone from the studio? They said if I didn't follow instructions, they'd destroy my career. They sent me the footage, told me to edit it, to make it look real." Sandra stepped forward. "Why us?" she asked quietly. Clara hesitated, then said, "Because you're both trusted, loved. They wanted to create a story that people couldn't ignore. Something emotional, something that blurs reality so much that no one can tell what's true anymore." Keanu's jaw tightened. "So it's all for publicity?" Clara shook her head. "No, it started that way, but now it's something else. They want to see how far you'll go before breaking. It's a test. They're recording your reactions right now." Keanu's eyes scanned the room. "There's another camera here?" Before Clara could answer, a voice echoed through the speakers. Calm, confident, almost amused. "Beautiful performance, both of you," the voice said. "You really do make truth look cinematic." The sound came from above, from the control booth. Keanu moved instantly, sprinting toward the stairs. Sandra followed, her heart pounding. When they reached the top, the booth door swung open, but the room was empty. Only a small speaker rested on the console, still playing faint static. On the desk lay a script, printed, bound, and marked in red ink. On the cover it said, "Scene 5, Breakdown." Keanu picked it up, flipping through the pages. It described their next confrontation in detail, word for word. Even the dialogue matched what they had just said. Sandra's stomach turned. "This isn't possible," she whispered. "How could they know what we said?" Keanu looked down at the pages, his voice steady but cold. "They're not writing the story," he said. "They're predicting it." The next morning, the studio called an emergency meeting with the executives. They promised to shut down production completely until everything was investigated. But Sandra and Keanu both knew the situation had gone beyond the studio. Someone was orchestrating something much larger. As they left the building, reporters surrounded them, shouting questions about leaked footage, secret relationships, and real emotions caught on camera. Sandra shielded her eyes from the flashes. Keanu stayed close beside her, his calm presence steadying her steps through the chaos. Later that evening, Sandra sat alone in her apartment. The city lights reflected off the glass windows. Her phone buzzed again, a new message. This time it wasn't a video. It was a line from the script they had found earlier. "The truth reveals itself when the camera stops." Her hands shook as she stared at the message. She knew what it meant. Whoever was behind this wasn't finished. They wanted her and Keanu to keep playing their parts until the story reached its real ending. She picked up the phone and called Keanu. When he answered, his voice was calm but heavy. "I got the same message," he said before she could speak. For a long time, neither said anything. Then Keanu whispered, "They want the next scene. Maybe it's time we give them one." The trap the night was quiet, except for the soft hum of traffic outside Sandra's apartment. The world outside carried on as usual, but inside, time seemed to move slower, heavier. Sandra sat near the window, staring at the faint city glow as Keanu stood across the room, pacing slowly, his eyes filled with thought. "They want a scene," he said, his voice low and steady. "So we'll give them one, but on our terms." Sandra looked up at him, uncertain. "You think we can outsmart whoever this is?" Keanu turned toward her. "They've been watching everything, predicting our moves. Maybe it's time we make them predict the wrong thing." His calm tone gave her a strange sense of reassurance. Through all of this, the fear, the confusion, he had never once lost control. His patience, his quiet resilience, it grounded her. She nodded slowly. "Okay, tell me what you're thinking." Keanu pulled out a small notebook from his jacket pocket. Inside were scribbled notes, times, and observations from the past few days. "They record everything between scenes," he said. "Not just here, but in public, too. They want authenticity, something that feels real. So if we make something real, but directed by us, they'll follow it." "A performance to trap them," Sandra said softly. "Exactly," he replied. "We write the next scene ourselves." The plan was simple but risky. They would stage an emotional confrontation, something raw enough to draw the hidden watcher closer, something irresistible for whoever was behind the camera. Once the person took the bait, Keanu had arranged for private investigators to monitor the building's security feeds and track any live transmissions from nearby devices. The next evening, they met at the studio, which had been officially shut down. The large sound stage was empty, lit only by a few dim lights and the pale glow of moonlight slipping through the high windows. The silence was heavy, the kind that made every breath sound too loud. Sandra stood near the center of the room while Keanu adjusted an old camera that had been planted earlier. It wasn't connected to the studio system. It was their own, completely offline. "This one's ours," he said, checking the lens. "Everything that happens tonight stays between us." "You really think they'll come?" she asked. Keanu looked at her. "They already have." He pointed to a small red light blinking in the corner near the ceiling. One of the hidden cameras had turned itself back on. Whoever was watching knew they were there. Sandra took a slow breath. "Then let's give them their scene." She turned toward him, her voice trembling with controlled emotion. "Why didn't you tell me?" she began, her tone carrying a quiet pain that wasn't in any script. "You knew this was happening. You saw the signs, and you kept it from me." Keanu's voice followed, calm but edged with feeling. "Because I wanted to protect you." The words echoed through the empty space. The tension between them was real, born not from acting but from everything they had endured. Every unsaid word, every sleepless night, it all poured into that moment. "Protect me," she said, stepping closer. "You think I need protection?" "I needed the truth." Keanu's eyes met hers, steady, vulnerable. "The truth hurts. Sometimes silence feels kinder." A long pause filled the room. Neither moved. Their breathing slowed, heavy with emotion. Then Sandra's voice softened. "So what now?" "Now," he said, glancing toward the hidden camera. "We end this." Before she could respond, a loud sound echoed from the hallway, a door creaking open. Sandra froze. Keanu turned, his body instinctively moving between her and the entrance. The footsteps grew closer, echoing against the floor. Then, out of the shadows, a figure appeared. It was Clara, the assistant editor who had confessed days earlier. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "Clara," Sandra whispered. "What are you doing here?" Clara stepped forward slowly, holding a small device in her hand. "I tried to stop them," she said, her voice breaking. "But they found out I talked to you. They made me come tonight. Who made you?" Keanu asked quietly. Before she could answer, another voice echoed from behind her, deep, calm, familiar. "I did." A tall man stepped out from the shadows wearing a gray suit. Sandra recognized him instantly. He was one of the senior studio producers, the man who had been overseeing the project from the very beginning. "You?" she said, disbelief in her voice. "Why?" The man smiled faintly, almost proud. Because truth doesn't sell, he said. Emotion does. And what you two created was pure emotion. People believe in you. They feel something they haven't felt in years. We just gave them more of it. You exploited us, Keanu said, his tone calm but sharp. We amplified you, the producer replied. You're legends. People don't want characters anymore. They want reality wrapped in illusion. They want to feel that what they see could be real love, real pain. We gave them that. Keanu stepped closer, his voice lowering. You crossed a line. The man shrugged. Lines are meant to be moved. You of all people should know that, Keanu. Acting is lying beautifully, isn't it? For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Sandra spoke, her voice trembling with restrained anger. You recorded us, manipulated us, and used our lives for profit. You turned something honest into a spectacle. The producer smiled again, but his expression faltered when Keanu said quietly, And now you're on camera. The man froze. Keanu nodded toward the corner. Our camera, he said. Not yours. Everything you just said. It's all recorded. Live feed's already backed up? Panic flickered across the producer's face. You can't. We already did, Keanu interrupted, his voice steady. The man turned to run, but two security guards appeared at the doorway, blocking his path. The investigators Keanu had hired stepped out behind them. Within minutes, the producer was escorted out, his defiance replaced by silence. Clara dropped the device she was holding, tears streaming down her face. Sandra exhaled shakily, relief mixing with disbelief. Is it really over? She whispered. Keanu looked toward the blinking red light in the corner. Almost. He walked to it, reached up, and turned it off. For the first time in weeks, the silence that followed felt real. They stood there side by side, surrounded by the emptiness of the set where everything had begun. Sandra turned to him, her voice soft. You knew exactly what to do. How did you stay so calm through all this? Keanu gave a faint smile. You can't control what others do. Only how you respond. She nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. Thank you for not giving up. He looked at her, the warmth in his eyes returning after so many days of tension. You didn't either. They left the studio together that night, walking into the quiet street, the cool air brushing against them like a soft reminder that the world outside still moved on. The truth was finally theirs again, but deep down, both of them knew something. Unspoken, lingered, a bond that had grown not from fiction, but from everything real they had endured together. As they reached the corner, Sandra's phone buzzed again. One new message. She hesitated, afraid to look. Keanu glanced at her. Go on, he said quietly. She opened it. The message contained only one sentence. The final scene begins tomorrow. The final scene. The sun rose slowly over the city, but for Keanu and Sandra, it didn't feel like morning. It felt like an intermission before something they couldn't avoid. The message on her phone, the final scene begins tomorrow, hung in both their minds like a countdown. They met early at a quiet cafe near the studio, a place far from the flashing lights and curious eyes. Sandra wore sunglasses to hide the exhaustion in her eyes, while Keanu sat across from her, calm but watchful. He stirred his coffee without drinking it, lost in thought. They're not stopping, she said softly. Even after everything, they're still writing the story for us. Keanu looked up at her. Then we changed the ending. She studied his face, wondering how he could still speak with such quiet certainty when everything around them felt so fragile. You think it's still possible? She asked. He nodded slowly. Truth always survives, but sometimes you have to set it free in the loudest way possible. That night, they returned to the studio one last time. It was locked, abandoned, filled with memories and shadows. Keanu had arranged a private, broadcast through the same feed the manipulators had been using, an open link that would send their live stream to every outlet that had covered the scandal. If the world had been watching lies, now it would watch the truth. Inside, Sandra stood before the same set where everything had begun. The bus, the lights, the echoes of the story that had changed their lives. She looked around quietly, remembering the first moment they'd met. The way one simple look had felt more real than any line of dialogue. Keanu stepped beside her, holding a small microphone. Ready? He asked. She nodded. As I'll ever be. He pressed a button on the console. A soft light blinked red. They were live. Keanu began to speak first, his tone gentle but unwavering. For weeks, people have seen parts of our story that weren't meant to be seen. Some of it was real, some of it was written by people who didn't understand what truth means. Tonight, we want to show you what's real. He turned toward Sandra. Their eyes met, and she felt the weight of everything that had passed between them: fear, pain, trust, and something deeper that neither of them had dared to name. She spoke next, her voice steady but full of emotion. Acting is about pretending. It's about becoming someone else. But somewhere along this journey, we stopped pretending. What you saw wasn't a performance. It was connection. It was two people finding honesty in a world built on illusions. Keanu smiled faintly, the warmth in his eyes undeniable. Maybe that's what scared them the most. That what we shared couldn't be scripted. As the words left his mouth, the sound of static filled the speakers. The lights flickered once, then again. Someone was trying to intercept the broadcast. Keanu looked at the console, his fingers moving fast to keep the signal alive. Sandra stepped closer, her heart racing. They're trying to stop it. Then let's finish it fast, he said quietly. She turned to the camera, her voice rising, not in anger, but in truth. To whoever's been hiding behind these screens, you can record everything, edit anything, twist every word, but you can't fake what's real. You can't fabricate humanity, and you can't own it. The signal flickered one last time, and then froze. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the broadcast cut abruptly. The room went dark, leaving them standing in the half-light, breathing hard, uncertain if the message had reached anyone. They stood there for a long while, listening to the hum of the dead equipment. Then, Sandra's phone buzzed again. One notification. A live comment feed. People were responding. Thousands of messages flooded in, words of support, love, and understanding. Fans from all over the world were writing the same thing. We believe you. Tears filled Sandra's eyes. She turned to Keanu, who simply nodded, his calm expression softening into relief. Looks like they got the message, he said. Looks like we did it, she whispered. Outside, the first light of dawn began to break through the clouds. The nightmare had ended, not because they fought back with anger, but because they had faced deception with truth. In the weeks that followed, the studio released a statement confirming the producer's involvement in the manipulation. Several executives were removed, and the film was postponed indefinitely. But the world wasn't talking about the scandal anymore. It was talking about honesty, vulnerability, and the way two people had turned exploitation into something deeply human. Keanu and Sandra kept their distance from the spotlight after that. They didn't need to explain anything. The truth had already spoken for them. Months later, they met again. No cameras, no lights, just two old friends sitting by the ocean. The wind carried the smell of salt. The waves rose and fell gently against the shore. Sandra looked at him, smiling softly. You ever wonder if we were supposed to meet like this? Not as characters, but as people? Keanu watched the horizon. Maybe the story was never written for the screen, he said. Maybe it was written for us. She nodded slowly, the quiet peace returning to her heart. And maybe this time, she whispered, it really isn't acting. They sat in silence after that, watching the sun sink beneath the water, its last golden light touching their faces. There were no more scripts, no more cameras, just two souls who had walked through illusion and found something real on the other side.